Hello, my name is Roberta Matthews. I'm a senior fellow at the John and Gardner Institute, and I've worked with Foundations of Excellence in one capacity or another since its inception. I had known John for a long time and worked with him on the AAHG board, but became involved in Foundations of Excellence when I was the provost at Brooklyn College, and Brooklyn College was invited to participate in the pilot of Foundations of Excellence. Since then, I've worked with the Institute almost on an annual basis, and more so since I retired in 2007. Rather than tell you about our experience at Brooklyn College, which for me was a long time ago, I'm going to focus on lessons that I've learned and that I'd like to pass on to you, having worked with many colleges over the years. My first suggestion to you is pitch a big tent. Bring in as many members of your college community as you can. And depending on the size of your community, that will range from 40 or 30 to a couple of hundred. It just depends on the size of your institution, but you should involve everybody who is engaged in any way in addressing the needs of first-year students. Remember that the Foundations of Excellence experience, in addition to whatever else it accomplishes, is a community-building experience, and you will have the opportunity to bring people together in a room, all of whom work with first-year students in one capacity or another, but many of whom have never met each other. Another important piece is the CPI, the Current Practices Inventory. I ask my colleges to send me their CPI by October 1st because it is the foundation upon which everything else is built. If you don't have your CPI in order, you will flounder as the year goes on. And let me talk about what that means. First of all, as some of your IR people have already discovered, the CPI asks for last year's data, and they have already entered it. All the data is there. There's no need to wait. If you haven't entered it already, enter it tomorrow, because that will be the basis for your information gathering. The other piece of the CPI has to do with identifying current practices, current policies, current activities for first-year students. There are any number of ways to go about this, but I would suggest that you kick off this activity at the first mass meeting you have of all the members of all the steering committees, and it's a good idea to have that. When you have everybody in the same room, ask them to brainstorm for a while and then talk about the first-year activities that they already have. The advantage of this is that you will discover that you are already doing a lot, although people in different areas may not know about it. And so it's a cause for celebration. It is also a cause for, it's an opportunity to discover duplication. For example, at Brooklyn College we discovered that student affairs and academic affairs were each offering first-year students separate orientations which covered basically the same material. Made no sense at all, and so we combined them into a big first-year convocation day, and the orientation has been much better ever since. So it's a cause for celebration, and it's a cause for overlap. You will also be collecting an evidence library, and you should begin to do that and have a robust evidence library by mid-October. But do that only with the, understanding the caveat that people will be adding to the evidence library all during the year, so it will grow. Your evidence library on one level will never be complete, so don't wait until you think you've collected everything in order to start your work, because you will never collect everything and it will just slow down the process. So do the best you can with the evidence library, and the more people you involve in gathering that information, the more rapidly the evidence library will grow. And then you can tell members of the committees that as they gather material, they can just add to the evidence library. The process is I guess what I suggest that my colleges do is what's now called the fast track. And in the fast track, most of the reports are finished by the end of December. I would suggest that you develop a schedule starting in early November where you meet relatively frequently, and by the end of December, every single subcommittee, Dimension subcommittee, will have presented one kind of report or another. Since the faculty survey occurs almost immediately and can be used almost immediately, I would schedule as the first presenters those dimension groups or dimension those committees that work with dimensions for which there are no student surveys. It's best to schedule the other ones after the student surveys are ready, which I think is end of November, beginning of December, maybe mid-December. But they can do a good deal of work beforehand, but should not make their presentations until the student surveys are ready. The surveys, by the way, are very, very powerful. They are pointed, they address the issues in the PIs of the dimensions and in the questions of the dimensions, and they reinforce each other. And it is very, very powerful when around whatever issue emerges, both faculty and students are in complete agreement that something is not working. I mean, that immediately becomes an action step to address. The advantage of finishing everything by the end of December is that you have the intercession then to have a really nice 1 or 2 day retreat where all of you can both work on your separate dimension reports and then share your conclusions together. And that will get you into a good position to really finish your work by mid-April or by the end of spring semester. The process of how you decide on how to cull through the recommendations and create your action plans is one that will emerge from your deliberations. But many colleges actually have a final retreat where they bring everybody together and everybody reviews all the reports, and what emerges are a stream of essentials that then become the most important aspects of the action plan. If you can get your final action plan in good shape by the end of spring or mid to end of spring, that means you can bring it to the Board of Trustees and or the Faculty Senate and or any other governance bodies that need to review it for approval. Once that happens, you will then be in a position to start implementing your action plan the following September. And it's always good to use the good energy and the good feeling that emerged and that will emerge during the year to jumpstart an action plan that begins implementation. By the way, you will discover along the way what one FoE person called low-hanging fruit. There are policies that you have, there are actions that you take that you will realize don't make much sense and that need to be eliminated. And some of them can be eliminated or tweaked almost immediately, and you should not wait to do that. But if you do have a piece of low-hanging fruit, if you have identified something that makes no sense and can be changed easily, do it immediately and save your action plan for the big thoughts and the big ideas. By the way, some colleges create 2 or 3 different versions of action plans, a shorter one for the Board of Trustees and the President, a longer one with more detail for the entire college community. But with the wonders of word processing these days, you can create as many versions as you want of the action plan, and as long as they agree with each other and contain the same material, they can range from being 2 pages long to 30 pages long, depending on the needs of the readers. So, those are the thoughts that I have about the process. You will discover that it is very difficult for individuals, even very strong individuals, to ride their hobby horses around the room because the FoE process is so clearly delineated and the steps are so obvious that it's hard for someone to keep obsessing about a particular idea when the rest of the committee is moving ahead. I would also involve everybody, and I'll end with where I began. I would involve as many people in the process, including those who are your quote-unquote enemies. In my experience as an administrator myself and in working with FoE universities and colleges, bringing in people who might, for whatever reasons, are against foundations of excellence, and I can think of an example of the head of the faculty senate who did not want a first-year institute created. He wanted the money used for faculty salaries, and it was a reasonable proposition from his point of view. Once he became involved in Foundations of Excellence, went through the process, and saw how significant the changes were and the increase in retention rate, which happens almost automatically, he became one of the biggest advocates for Foundations of Excellence. So do bring everybody in, and what you will be doing is creating a forum for discussion that will have a lasting effect on your campus. I'm going to end there. I think you are very fortunate to have chosen Foundations of Excellence. If you choose to do the transfer piece of it simultaneously, very often what colleges do is use basically the same members for both committees, but change the one or two key people who need to be involved in one and don't need to be involved in the other. But often, most of the people who are involved in one are involved in the other. So good luck. You're in for a wonderful experience, and it will be transformative, and it will be a happy one as well. Congratulations.